Good morning, Don Pelayo checking in with you guys. It is very early Thursday morning. I think it's right around 3 in the morning. Um, October 30th, 2025. Back again just I'm trying to put these videos out when I have some free time. I went to bed, well, fairly early last night and I've just woken up. So I, gosh, I've been seeing so much here lately that's going on. Our society is just becoming so stratified between the top 10% of income earners and then everybody else. The bottom 90% of income earners, it's just I don't know how some people are making it right now. It's like, I do okay for myself, it's like I'm single, I live alone. If you're single and live by yourself and have your own house and everything these days, you're doing okay. But I don't know how people are working like just kind of regular average jobs, either like in a restaurant or in retail or anything like that, and how they're living. Because for me, now they probably do pair up and have multiple incomes under one roof. I doubt there's very many of those people living by themselves, but there are single moms out here just with kids. And it's like I mean, they have to be getting some assistance from somewhere because with the cost of living the way it is, it's just you know, I just don't see it. I don't see how these people were making it. But then every day I work in a financial planning practice, and it's like I see the other side of things. Um, there are people making so much money at it that you just kind of look at it like, are you kidding me? um, and I mean, some of them have worked, have gotten are very highly educated and have, are doctors or, um, you know, we have, some corporate executives, some high paid attorneys, things like that. And then you have business owners, people that have started their own business. Most of those people are approaching retirement already. They're not very, we don't have a whole lot of young business owners that are really killing it, but most of our clients are approaching retirement years or already in retirement years. Um, but it's just amazing to me how much some of these people are earning with, you know, um, then I just think about how there are a few things that the political parties are trying to do. And I've been hearing a little bit out of Florida about how they're trying to eliminate the property tax. They want to get rid of property taxes. And on the face of it, it sounds good. It sounds good not to have property tax. Everybody who wants to pay property taxes, right? But then I think about it and I'm like, well, hold on. If you get rid of property taxes, it makes it real easy for these people, or these companies that are buying up properties, these really high net worth individuals to just go out and buy properties. And if they don't have to worry about property taxes, they can just accumulate as much property as they possibly can and not have to worry about those property taxes. And I'm just thinking, I don't know. I understand the sentiment of not liking property taxes, but I also see how the wealthy, the rich, could take that and just buy up as much property as possible. I think if they're going to do something like that, like a no property tax rule, there needs to be a stipulation that it is on your primary residence only and not on there's still going to be property taxes on investment real estate. I think that needs to be stipulated in the laws there, and I'm not sure if that's part of the Florida law or not. But I've been thinking about that. I just see how the wealthy could use that to buy up a bunch of property and not have to pay, and not have to worry about the property tax situation. So I would recommend if your state is considering something. I think for right now, I just think it's Florida. I think Florida's been the only state that's been talking about doing something like that. But red states may consider something like that. It's not real easy because Florida doesn't have a state income tax, so getting rid of the state property tax, they got to raise revenue somewhere to run their operations. Although I think Florida does, try to keep their costs down, but the state government has to have income from somewhere, and I guess most of their income is coming from sales taxes and other means. They do have toll roads in Florida, things like that. But anyway, just something I was thinking about. Also, another thing I've been thinking about here lately too is utility bills. Many people are seeing their utility costs begin to rise, and some of this, depending on where you live, is due to the rise in these data centers. We have one of these data centers, maybe about 10 miles from where I live, and it's owned by a bank. It's a bank's data center, and it's every time I go near, I go by there, and it is like secured like Fort Knox. They've got barricades preventing people from getting in there. They've got they've got it locked up like for real, like Fort Knox, and it just runs all the time. It has the big like steam towers that are coming out of it, and it uses up a lot of energy. And these data centers they're building are really driving up utility costs for people. And I'm starting to think that what's going to have to happen is they're going to have to pass a law rule that these data centers that are opening up are going to have to provide their own power sources instead of being on the public grid and driving up everybody else's utility costs. Maybe they're going to have to. I think they should have an area where these data centers are set aside, and maybe they could maybe each company's data center, maybe they could go in together to do a power grid of their own in order to run these data centers. But I don't think they should be allowed to operate off of the public grid. That's what is driving up everybody else's utility bills. I don't think that's fair to the majority of people. But anyway, right now we just have a real significant cost of living problem, and there's just the big problem is that you've got some people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year with no problem. I talked to someone earlier today, and they have the opportunity. It was like they're making around almost $500,000 a year part time, and they have an option of going full time and getting an extra couple $100,000 a year. And it was just like, like really, it's like, but it's just they were a doctor, and that's another thing too. People keep blaming the insurance companies for the high cost of healthcare. Let me tell y'all something. It's not the insurance companies. It is just the cost of healthcare itself in the United States. Yeah, okay, maybe the insurance companies add a sliver of the total cost on. It's not the insurance companies though. These medical bills are just the salaries of all these doctors and medical workers, the cost of operating a hospital, the equipment that's in the hospital. I mean, the equipment in the hospital, millions and millions of dollars for some of these pieces of equipment in the hospital. It's just that's where it's at. When I had bariatric surgery last year, and between all of the different bills, between the surgeon, the operating room costs, the stay in the hospital overnight, and the anesthesiologist, it was right at $100,000. And I mean, I was in the hospital for I guess about a day and a half. I had surgery early one morning, and then after surgery, I was required to stay overnight in the hospital. And then about noon the next day, I left. Um, and it was almost $100,000. And I'm like, wow. Now I did have insurance through work. I did have to meet my annual deductible, so I had to pay a couple thousand roughly of that. Um, but the actual bill that goes to the insurance company it was like around $100,000. And the insurance company is willing to do it, by the way. They go ahead and cover things like this because for them, they feel like it's cheaper than you getting, you know, diabetes and having all these other medical ailments that over time is going to wind up costing them more. It's actually pretty amazing. Since I've had bariatric surgery, I've lost about 90 pounds. My lab work, my blood work, my labs, it's just amazing to see how it's improved. It's you think about the weight loss, and that's what most people focus on with bariatric surgery. But before I had the surgery, I had diabetes too. I had just been diagnosed with that. I have my cholesterol had not been good for years. I had high cholesterol for 15 years or more. I had, my blood work wasn't now when I go, I've had lab work here. I just passed the 1 year anniversary of that surgery and they do a bunch of lab work just to make sure everything looks good. My numbers are like right in the middle of the normal range on just about everything. I have one number that's still a little off and I'm trying to get it fixed, but it has come down. That number was really high before my surgery, and it's something called ferritin, which I had never heard of before I had bariatric surgery. I got tested for it, and leading up to that surgery, and my number was like 4 times the normal range, the high of the normal range, and that was like whoa. So normally, I think 400 is the high of the normal range on that, and I was around 1,500 something. It was like, wow, why is that so out of whack? And it is a marker for inflammation in the body. It's kind of a sign that you got some inflammation going on in the body. Well, so I had surgery and it's been gradually coming down. I'm still high. I'm like 1,100 now, somewhere around 1,100. So at the very least, it's coming down. I think a lot of it is diet. Um, I was thinking about my diet a little bit, and it's like I've never been. I will eat, vegetables, but I don't eat the amount of vegetables that we're normally supposed to eat on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm thinking, well, so I got some salad stuff at the grocery store last night on the way home. Trying to make some lifestyle changes that way and eat a little bit better. I am trying to get plenty of protein too. I did get some protein sources last night too. Protein's not as cheap. Well, I was looking at beef. Man, beef just has skyrocketed. And I don't know when that's going to return to somewhat normal prices, but so I've been opting like for chicken breast because chicken breast is still pretty affordable, and fish as well. Fish too, though. It's like because I don't. I'll buy tuna and things like that, the little tuna packets that you can put on salad and that sort of things. And it's pretty solid protein. But then you go to the grocery store and go in the seafood section. You usually have the option of wild caught or you have farm raised. And if you've ever seen those farm tanks where they raise the fish, it's nasty. It's not something you really think about wanting to eat. So I typically when I do buy like the actual fish, I'll opt for the wild caught, but I mean, you're talking, 15, $20 a pound at that point. And, you know, that adds up. Of course, right now I only eat about a quarter of a pound of meat at a time. So, that can be 4 meals, that can be protein source for four meals. But, yeah, last night I came home and, I put a couple of pieces of baked chicken on my plate for dinner last night. I had a breast and I had a thigh, and I ate the thigh first. I'm like, I just can't eat anymore. It's like that surgery. It really does limit how much you can eat. I thought I was going to be able to eat both pieces, and I was like, after I ate that thigh, I was like, I just had no more room. It's amazing how it does that. But anyway, um, I know everybody's a little bit stressed out here financially. I do. One of the things I would really stress, and this is something that you probably will want to talk to your kids or maybe your grandkids about, is the fact that it used to matter, that piece of paper that you get coming out of college, that diploma, used to mean a lot more than it does now. The piece of paper doesn't mean as much anymore unless you get and even master's degrees don't mean that much anymore. If you have a doctorate in something, it means, that's significant. That's a significant achievement, and depending on what your doctorate's in, you can get paid pretty well off of that. But it really comes down to, what can you do? What is your value prop? Why should an employer pay you? What do you bring to the table that makes you worth paying a large amount of money for? What kind of skills you have? And that's what it's all about now. Um, some of you may go to school and learn how to do high tech stuff. I would be on the cutting edge of that if that's what you're into. Cybersecurity, um, the AI, all that. The question I have about some of that stuff, though, is with AI is like, does it have staying power? You always have to keep your skills. You're always going to have to go back to school. You're going to always have to be learning and staying on top of the newest things in that field, because it's always there's always new things in the tech sector. um I think you just have to kind of go into that field, just realizing that you're always going to have to be learning. um my industry, in terms of being like in finance, being financial advisors, things like that, it's changing because of AI. We are hearing some of that. Although I will tell you, when there's kind of a difference. Some young people are fine managing their own investments. They prefer to have their own little account where they do their own trading. Some people are comfortable with that. Some people are not. Some people know nothing about investments. Um, but when you get with wealthy clients, people that are really, really doing well, almost all of them have advisors that they talk to. Maybe not just financial advisors. Most of them may probably have their own CPAs, have accountants. They may have, some of them may have attorneys, estate attorneys, things like that, to help guide them in their moves with how best to structure their affairs. Because if you don't do it the right way, you can find yourself with a pretty massive tax bill if you don't structure things the right way when you get up into the major wealth. When people really start making a lot of money and really start building assets, you want to make sure that they're owned the right way, make sure that everything's structured the right way just for tax purposes. Um, it does get to a point where it matters. It's we deal with some of those clients that have to worry about things like estate taxes, which most people don't have to worry about estate taxes because there's an exemption every year. I'm sorry, there's a lifetime exemption. I'm sorry. Um, I think right now it's around 15 million, 30 million if you're married filing jointly. So, most people don't meet that exemption threshold, but some people do or will when they get to that point. And so then you have to start looking at, and anything over that threshold gets taxed at roughly 40%. And so when you start looking at, wow, the government's going to take 40% of anything over that number, then you got to find ways of trying to reduce your taxable estate using irrevocable trusts and other methods, in order to get that down. Anyway, um, I am. I wish I had that problem. I'm not gonna have to worry about that. I did take out some life insurance, a new policy on myself this year. I had an older policy that I'd had for a while, um, but I didn't feel like it was enough, so I let that one go, and I've got a new policy now that I'm working on, and it's still kind of going through the review process, but I've already paid my first premium on it. So, um, just to make sure that if something happens to me, my daughters, it'll pay them a nice chunk of change. Of course, these days, it's not really, in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that much. I'm thinking that as time goes on, I may add to it. I could add some additional term insurance, on the side to that policy. But I just want to help my daughters as much as I can. It's like that's really kind of what I'm focused on these days. I want to try to pay off all of my debt. I'd like to try to pay off my house. Um, Leave my daughters with some assets to kind of help them through life. One of the things I'm kind of concerned about, it's like my daughters, it's like my oldest is 21 and my youngest will be 14 here in about a month. And I'm worried about them, the world they're growing up in, because, the whole family structure has really changed. And I don't know if young people are going to get married, if they're going to have kids. That used to be just a part of things. That used to be just the way it was. You eventually got married and you had kids, and that was just normal. And now, and maybe the cost of living will kind of create the pressure to where people do want to pair up, but it's not like it used to be. And I think that's kind of a sad thing about our society today. I think that's part of the whole internet, the social media thing. It's like it's really kind of twisting our society um, in unhealthy ways. I think the human family has been kind of a basic, unit of society for thousands of years. And it's just kind of sad seeing the way things are changing, and you don't know if your daughters are going to have husbands or, and children. I, it's like that's really up in the air at this point, I think. Anyway, just my thoughts at 3:30 in the morning. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. There's still a lot of problems out here. I think the global competition is becoming harder, which is making things harder on Americans. I think we as Americans have gotten kind of soft, have gotten a little lazy in terms of learning, not so much as in working. I think we're all working, but we have to realize that we're competing in a global environment now. There are people in other parts of the world that are really trying to push themselves, drive themselves to succeed. There's other Americans here in our country that are really pushing themselves to learn and grow and be successful. And if you're not always trying to improve your knowledge and improve your skill sets, you're going to get left behind. And that's just the way. Sadly, that's just kind of the way the world is now. You always have to be learning something. Learn how to learn a new skill. Doesn't necessarily have to be book learning. It can be learning just how to do something with your hands. Our local community colleges have good programs to teach you how to do things. You can make really good money just learning a trade at the community college. So, especially if you are in your 20s or so, you may really want to think about that. You could look at HVAC. Americans aren't going to do without their air conditioning. I can tell you that right now. And the costs of that are pretty high. So in terms of, even if you don't go to work in it, you could learn how to work on your own system maybe at your local community college. Save yourself a buttload of money later on. you know, you could, there's of course plumbing and welding and electricians, and all these people can make really good money. And maybe an opening to later on down the road starting your own business. Something to think about. But anyway, I'm going to get my day started here. I'm feeling a little tired now, but it's about ready. It's about time for me to get up. So I get my day started early, and yesterday I wasn't feeling much like studying, so I didn't do my CFP study yesterday. So I got some ground to make up today. I did DoorDash last night, even though it was raining a little bit. It wasn't raining hard, but there was a light rain last night. So I did okay considering that it was raining. Tonight it's supposed to be clear, so I'll be out dashing this evening. I'm trying to really hold myself accountable for my door dashing hours. I haven't been taking full advantage of how much I could make on a weekly basis doing that, and I really want to start driving that up, especially with Christmas coming, and I've got some ground to make up in terms of savings for this year. I had some goals. My finances, I'll just say real quickly, I've actually really done well overall with my goals for this year. I've done a lot of debt reduction this year in 2025. I didn't do as well on the savings end of things, but I really brought my debt load down this year, and that was a win for me this year. I feel like I've done pretty well this year. So 2026, now that I've got a lot of this debt off, is going to be all about running up savings, building out a fully funded emergency fund, really starting to build up my retirement accounts, that sort of thing. That's really going to, I've got some retirement savings, but I really want to start maxing out my contributions on some of these accounts. So that's going to happen in 2026. My door dashing, if I really push myself, I could make 500 a week, working DoorDash in the evenings, and then on, a little bit on the weekends. And, 500 a week may not sound like that much. But on top of what I'm already doing in terms of my primary job, I have a decent income with my primary job, and it pays my bills basically, but it doesn't leave a lot extra after that. So the DoorDash stuff is really for me to devote that money towards financial goals, paying off debt and building assets. So that's what I use it for. But last couple of months, I've only been doing maybe 100, 200 a week. I've been a little bit lazy. And I'm like, no, I gotta stop that. I've got financial goals to hit. And I just need to hold myself accountable. When you're door dashing, you're basically running your own business. So anyway, you guys, let me know what you think. Let me know what's going on with you in your lives. Any thoughts or ideas that you might have about what people can do to improve their situation. That would be great. This is Don Palayo checking out.